this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and we've been focusing on some pretty heavy topics on The Middle lately, trying to keep up with all the news. So this hour, we're going to take a little break from the politics and turn our gaze to outer space, the cosmos. We're dipping into our archives to bring you one of our favorite shows with one of our favorite guests. That would be astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. We talked to him last year around the time of the eclipse, but turns out not that much has changed in space in the last year, so this show still holds. So before we get to our conversation, last week on the show, we dove into the remote work versus in-person work question that employers and employees around the country are wrestling with. We got a lot of great calls on that, and here are some of the ones that came in after the show.
Hi, it's Jane from Concord, Mass. There are significant impacts on climate. If we reduce commuting, we reduce traffic, we reduce people sitting in traffic. So anything we can do to reduce commuting and reduce pollution helps with climate change.
Hi, Jeremy. I'm calling from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. My name's Mark. And I just was wondering, whether or not this remote work has really reduced the opportunity for people to organize and, commiserate about their work and actually, collaborate on, making demands from their employer.
Hi, I'm Asia. I'm calling from Illinois. I work remotely in another state. I think it really depends on what you do. My work is entirely on a computer. So if that's the case, I think it does make sense. We're able to attract talent from all across the country. I think it's opened up a lot of doors.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in, and you can listen to that entire show anytime because The Middle is also available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also available anytime on YouTube, by the way. Subscribe to our channel. So let's get right to our conversation with astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's the author of a number of books, including Merlin's Tour of the Universe and Starry Messenger. He's also the director of the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History. Turns out he's also a fan of the concept of this show, The Middle.
Yeah, well, just in the sense that, let me take a more cosmic view.
Yeah.
As we walk around, and there are people who hold very strongly held perspectives or opinions or views, so strong that they'll dig in their heels and you can't even really have a conversation with them. Now, unless I'm just an old man on the porch on a rocking chair saying, oh, back in my day, but let me say, back in my day, if you had an opinion that differed from someone else, they wouldn't attack you for that.
Yep.
They would say, oh, what is that opinion? And then oh, that's different. How about, what do you think of this? And then there'd be an exchange of ideas, and then you went out and had a beer. And right now, the climate is very different for that. And if social media is a platform of expression, let's take it as an example, and I post any opinion at all, it gets attacked by people whose opinion differs. And I find that odd because it means they want everyone else's opinion to be exactly aligned with theirs. And there's a word for those systems of nations and they're called dictatorships, where everybody's opinion is exactly aligned. So what I cherish is not so much the middle. I cherish points of view that render both extremes obsolete. So is that really the middle, or is it another dimension that you ascend to and then look at what people are saying, thinking, and doing and say, have you considered it this other way?
Well, and that's why we like to
also... It doesn't involve compromise, it involves another outlook, another perspective.
That's why we also like to say that the show is about meeting in the middle, which is the other way to use that word. You write in your book, Starry Messenger, that Bill Clinton kept a moon rock on a coffee table in his office in case a political argument broke out. He would remind people that the rock came from the moon. Why do you think that being reminded of our place in the universe puts things into perspective like that?
Yeah, it works every time. I mean, the subtitle of the book is Starry Messenger, Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization. So this story was communicated to me directly by Bill Clinton. And I was able to have an extended conversation with him about that. He would be in the Oval Office, and they have a little table. Often there are photographs of people seated around this little coffee table thing in the middle. And if there was a tense moment, he would point to it and say, do you know this rock is from the moon? And then everyone would just stop. And then they would say, the moon, right? Oh, 1969, the Apollo, we went to the moon, we brought it back. And it resets the conversation and allows you to say, is there another way to look at what's going on from above? And by the way, are you really meeting in the middle? No, you're meeting on another platform, in another vista that is neither where you are or the other person are, nor anywhere in between. You've ascended to look back at what all of these ideas are, to reassess what you think is important and what is not. A cosmic perspective has that power over you.
Why do you think that it's so difficult right now to have that conversation with somebody who you disagree with when, as you say, back in your day, and by the way, back in my day too, and I grew up in the 80s, it was different than it is now?
Yeah, I hate saying back in my day or the kids of today.
Right.
I don't want to be that guy. Let me just say, I don't want to be that guy. But I don't know that I have a good answer for that. What I do know is, in the age of search engines, no matter what your idea is, you see, you might have been just the lone person thinking something in a community, and maybe it was weird, but it was pretty harmless. Now you type in your crazy idea, and you will find every other person in the world who has that crazy idea, which can give you a false sense of authenticity, a false sense of what is objectively true or false in the world. And so why would there be so many people who think Earth is flat? They found each other, and they think they're onto something. Whereas when they were isolated among rational thinkers, the idea maybe didn't last so long, or it wasn't magnified by the knowledge that other people shared it. So this could be the reason.
Let's get to the phones because we've got a lot of calls coming in. Olivia is with us from North Las Vegas, Nevada. Olivia, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Hi, my name's Olivia. I'm 12 and I'm from North Las Vegas. Before I get into the question, I just wanted to say I am a big science nerd and I'm a really big fan of yours. But what specific struggles and frustration do you frequently have when trying to communicate the importance of science and critical thinking? Because it seems that there are just some people that don't get it.
Thank you, Olivia, for that. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I got into trouble with fellow educators when I once tweeted that the occasional teacher who complains, quote, the kids just don't want to learn, maybe instead should be declaring, maybe I suck at my job. So if you have a challenge communicating with someone, it's all too easy to blame them for not wanting to listen, rather than to ask yourself, is there a new way to approach this topic? So what I try to do is I try to pose questions back to the person. How about Bigfoot? If you type Bigfoot into the search engines, up will come this, was it 1972, 71, a Super 8 film of this like creature walking behind, in the distance behind a tree. That's the first thing that comes up. So consider that everyone today has a high resolution camera, yet we do not have better images than that. So all manner of life experience could only be communicated through what you would say is your eyewitness testimony, which the world has a very false sense of its truth.
Let's go to Hannah, who's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hannah, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a big fan, and I know you've had a really great career, in academia and research, but also as a public figure. So I was wondering if you think that scientists can or should also kind of spread awareness about their fields through public awareness, kind of like you have.
Yeah, so I can tell you there are a lot of nuances here, and let me sort of compress it so we can get even more questions in the short time that we have together. When you're formally trained as a scientist, nowhere in there is there any training to communicate, not verbally. Writing, yes, you have to be able to write, but most people can do that. And not only that, there's some percent of my colleagues who now that we have neurodiverse vocabulary, some percent are on the autism spectrum. And we might have said Asperger's in a day, but I think that's been merged to the autism umbrella. And if that's what you are, you're perfectly happy in the lab and you don't want to talk to anybody. So you shouldn't be forced to. So there's enough of us who have energy to do so that do so. I'm visible because I have like big platforms, but if you dig into...
Well, you're also visible because you are... I am the stepchild of two physicists, and both of them have talked about you as a communicator that is very unusual in the scientific community. Scientists have scientist brains, and you have both.
Yeah, so, and I'm saying it's not, there's no force to nurture it on the route to the PhD, which is the entry gate to research science. So it not only is it not nurtured, you can be a great scientist and have no social skills at all. Right. So that means this task, it would be unrealistic to require it of everyone. But I can tell you, if you search for science popularizers on YouTube, the list is growing. And I'm very happy to see that, because one day I'm going to step out the back door when there's enough of everyone else on the landscape, and then you won't even miss me because everybody else is doing that. And it'll be the natural course of what you'd expect in all of the professions, if not by all the scientists, many of them.
Stand by right there, Neil deGrasse Tyson, because Tolliver, we are actually in space already right now on the satellite, getting out to the stations for distribution.
Absolutely. Well, if anyone is listening out there, this is part of what was enclosed in the 1977 launch of the Voyager 2 spacecraft on the so-called Golden Record, which had examples of human music and language, as well as a message from then UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim.
I send greetings on behalf of the people of our planet. We step out of our solar system into the universe seeking only peace and friendship, to teach if we are called upon, to be taught if we are fortunate. We know full well that our planet and all its inhabitants are but a small part of this immense universe that surrounds us, and it is with humility and hope that we take this step.
We'll be right back with more of The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We are focused on elevating voices from the middle, politically, geographically, philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're bringing you an encore edition of our conversation with renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson about all things space-related. Our conversation continued with a caller, David from Columbia, South Carolina, who had an interesting question for Neil about the evolution of dogs.
Yeah, I just recently seen some reels of his talking about dogs and how affectionate they are and how just all their characters. And where did they come from in the evolutionary chain?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's your question. Okay. So we devoted almost an entire episode of Cosmos to that very question back when I hosted the series. And the name of the episode is called And the Wolf Shall Become the Shepherd. And we chronicle the sequence of basically the domestication of wolves. Basically, we take wolves and say, no, you're too violent, or you're too mean, or you're too... And you look at the litter that any wolf gives, and you see which are the tamer ones among them. And what they did back then was simply kill the rest. And you raise the tame ones, and you keep doing this through multiple generations until they are what you want them to be. So basically, dogs were the first GMOs. Right? We genetically modified wolves to become dogs. We did it with cats as well. We've been modifying the genes of food and other animals ever since we've had the power to do so.
By the way, Cosmos was a fantastic show, and I remember another episode that you did that was sort of talked about the discovery of infrared light, looking out of the infrared light, how we can see into space and see different things that we can't see with the naked eye. And I wonder, as you think about all the ways that we look out into space, the light we can see, the infrared light, now gravitational waves that we can detect, what do you think has been the most effective way to determine what's out there in space so far?
Well, it's been light, because anything that's hot will glow. Of course, there are things in the universe that are not hot, like black holes and dark gas clouds and things. But the thing where all the action is tend to be things that are hot enough to glow. So if you have a device that can detect glowing objects, then which we call telescopes, right? Then it gives you access not only to nearby objects, but objects clear across the universe. And you learn that they glow in bands of light that are outside of the human eyes. It was hard for some people to recognize that there are things going on in the world that you just biologically cannot know without the help of scientific instruments. In fact, when Herschel discovered infrared light, he called it light unfit for vision. And that was the only way he could describe that. It was light beneath the red, so we call it infrared, less than red. And beyond that, we found X-rays, gamma rays, radio waves. And so the entire electromagnetic spectrum is our primary means of decoding the universe. And as you correctly noted, we can now detect gravitational waves. These are when things go bump in the night. Very massive things go bump in the night, like black holes. We're working on a neutrino telescope. That's another kind of particle that's not light, but it's a particle that hails from the earliest formation of stars in the universe. And so these are windows, figurative, but I think of them as almost as literal windows that we open up and say, oh, now this is another aspect of the universe coming to us. When we perfected ultraviolet telescopes, black holes, it turns out, the material spiraling in gives off copious amounts of ultraviolet. You turn on an ultraviolet telescope, bam, there are all your black holes in the galaxy. So it's literally and figuratively opening windows. So it's by far our most potent tool that we've had access to since Galileo.
Let's go to Christian, who's calling from Fort Myers, Florida. Christian, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
When are we going to be able to habit the exoplanets like the Red Earth? Like an exoplanet that goes by that name, where red, I don't know what's exactly the name of it, but its slogan is everything's redder on the other side.
Christian, can I just ask you before we go to Neil deGrasse Tyson for the answer how old you are?
12.
Awesome. Thank you for calling in. Okay, Neil deGrasse Tyson, your answer.
I'm not sure what it means to be red on the other side, but I can tell you that the catalog of exoplanets that we now have is rising through 6,000. Wow. And in 20 years ago, 1995, that number was 0. So we've been going like gangbusters. It's been a cottage industry within my field, and we're finding planets of all stripes. Planets close to their host star, far away, planets around hot stars, around cooler stars. They're still hot. They're just cooler than the hot stars. We're finding planets in the Goldilocks zone, which is where we might more likely find liquid water. And we know that liquid water on Earth is crucial for life as we know it, because every place we find liquid water on Earth, there's life, even the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea, it's clearly named by people who didn't have access to a microscope. It doesn't have macroscopic bony fishes in it, but it's got other life forms in it. So the catalogs are growing. So I don't know specifically what the reference would be to red on the other side, but I can tell you that there's enough exoplanets out there that if there's any variation we might care to think about, it's surely represented in that set.
So if we've discovered these planets that are way out there, are we going to need something like what we see in all these science fiction movies, like a wormhole to get there quickly and within a human lifetime? And do you think that those exist?
So yes, we'll need a wormhole. That's the simplest question, the simplest answer, or its equivalent, which would be warp drives. We would need some way to transcend the speed of light legally, and a wormhole and a warp drive would do that. Without it, it's hopeless. It's hopeless, because take the fastest rocket we have ever launched. That's the one that went to Pluto. All right. And why was that the fastest? Because we have a rule in science that whatever is your experiment, you want it to be completed before you die. Okay, that's an entry level requirement. And so Pluto is so far away that the principal investigator said, we want to have this happen quickly. That is the fastest thing we've ever launched outside the solar system, and it escaped the solar system. If you aimed that to the nearest star to the sun, you hitched a ride on it, you arrive at Alpha Centauri 70,000 years from now.
Wow.
So it's just not commensurate with human physiology.
Let's go to Taylor, who's calling from San Diego. Taylor, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hi. So this is a great question that you guys are leading into my question, which is how far out do you think, or if ever in our lifetime, will we confirm or meet alien life forms or extraterrestrials?
Good question.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So to me, an extraterrestrial life could be bacteria on another planet. That would transform biology as we know it. If you have a whole other genesis of life, and does it use DNA to encode its identity? If not, what does it do? Does it evolve? There's all manner of questions you could ask if you found life on a planet other than Earth, because all of biology is anchored on what happened here on Earth. So we revel in the biodiversity of life, but really behind closed doors, the biologists confess to one another that they have a sample of one, and that sample is life on Earth, that all has a common ancestor going back far enough. So I'd be content with just slime molds, but generally people who are searching for life want to see something more interesting than that, something that we might call intelligent. And there's an analogy made by Jill Tarter and her colleagues at the SETI Institute, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, because if they're trying to communicate with us and they're sending a radio signal, let's say, so there are a lot of variables here. Are you listening at the moment they sent it?
Right.
That's first. Second, did it come to us, or did it miss us and go in another direction, headed somewhere else in space? Also, suppose they sent that signal and it was 2,000 years ago, Rome. All right. No one is going to reply because they don't have the technology.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean there isn't intelligence and civilization at work on Earth. So you have to be at the right time with the right equipment, pointing our telescopes in the right direction to receive a signal that might have been sent at the right time to arrive for you to then decode it. So the analogy that they give at SETI is you go to the ocean shore and you take a cup, an empty cup, you scoop up some ocean water and look at it and say, the ocean has no whales in it. So that's how much of the universe we've sampled in life, and how much of the parameter space, that's what we call it, that we've sampled. So we haven't found any, but you can't say, therefore there isn't, because there's so many other ways to search that we haven't done yet.
Let's go to Isaac, who's in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Isaac, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Hi, thank you for having me. Kind of have an interesting question for you. So if you could solve one cosmic mystery with the snap of your fingers, which mystery would it be, and why would you choose it? So basically, and also how would this resolution basically impact the understanding of the universe?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I love when people ask if you could solve one thing with the snap of your fingers. So yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a cop-out answer. I don't know if the caller will be happy with this answer, but it's the answer I'm giving you. You ready?
Yeah.
I remembered questions in graduate school, that if I only had the answer to this question, then everything would be solved. Then I realized when the answer to that question arrived, it led to other questions. It put me on a new vista where I could see farther than I could see before, and new questions then became important to me. So because of this life experience, no longer do I say, I just need the answer to this. That's all. I don't think that way. Because for me, it is the eternal arrival of questions after every new question that's answered that is the lifeblood of science. Now, there are questions I do have, and I don't know their answer. For example, are we smart enough to answer the questions that we've posed? Or, deeper still, are we smart enough to even know what questions to ask?
I'm guessing the answer is no.
I lay awake wondering whether the human mind, as proud of it as we are, is sufficient to completely understand the universe itself. So the question is, are we smart enough to understand the universe? If I get that answer and the answer is yes, then I'll go back like gangbusters and be fearless of the frontier, which I sort of already am, but I carry this suspicion that maybe something could be too hard for the limited brain wiring contained within humans. It might need some alien, who's 100 times smarter than us.
Let's go to Jackson, who's in Tallahassee, Florida. Jackson, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Hey, it's a huge honor to be talking to you. My question was, what's your opinion on the naming of things like telescopes or reactions or different phenomenon in terms of how those names are tied to their namesakes, like political or cultural beliefs, and how that like progresses as culture and society changes?
Are you talking about telescopes specifically, or more broadly things in our society?
More broadly.
Okay, so there's an entire section of my book, Starry Messenger: Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization. There's an entire section in there on the naming of things. It's in particular statues. Right after the George Floyd murder, there was a removal of many statues that at one time were revered and then not. Right. So my daughter has offered her opinion on this, and I kind of agree. I just don't know how you would invoke it in practice. She said, "Don't name anything after anybody." Why would you ever have to do that? Come up with some other clever name, especially in modern times where we know everything about everybody. Okay. And so the concept of a hero, which is only the most perfect ethereal elements of a human being, in an era before the internet, that was possible. In an internet world where all your pictures, all your pictures when you were drunk at the party, that's online, and now you're running for office. Not that would be discounting today, but there was a day when that would have been damning. Not anymore. So social cultural mores shift, yes, but our access to information about a person is so thorough that no longer, I don't think, can we just revere people the way we once did and build statues to them.
What about planets? Because don't they name like these far off planets after people too?
Okay, so let's get astronomical. So the planets are named after Roman gods, and their moons are named after Greek characters in the life of the Greek counterpart to that Roman god. So that's the Greek and Roman sort of tracking of our philosophies and our science. 2/3 of all stars in the night sky that have names have Arabic names. And these come from the Arabic culture from 1,000 years ago, the golden age of Islam. So now we have the Islamic cultures, the Arabic culture. What was not represented there is Asian cultures, so India, China, nor Aboriginal Australia, nor First Peoples in the Americas. Those are not represented in the official naming of things. And that has to do with influence over who had the power to name things.
But by the way, you're talking about different ethnicities, different places around the world, different kinds of people and things getting named after them. You bring up something really interesting in your book that I hadn't thought very much about, but it's that, when you go up to somebody and you say, "Where are you from?" and they say, "Well, I'm from Brooklyn." And it's like, "Well, where are your parents from?" And they're from Italy. And you say, we like to pick the place that makes the most sense for us, that we like the most, to say where we're from.
It's quite arbitrary, right?
It's very arbitrary. We're all from the same place. Right.
Yeah, let me just re-say what you just said, because you mixed two of them.
Because I did a bad job of it.
Only in America do you say, "What are you?" Right? So you say, "What are you?" "Oh, I'm Italian." They say, "Well, where were you born?" I said, "Brooklyn." "Where were your parents born?" "Brooklyn." "Where were their parents born?" "Italy." "So I'm Italian." Right? Well, that's kind of why doesn't he just say American? But he doesn't. He goes back to a point where he wants to establish and flag plant and establish a bit of pride. Another person I did the same exercise. They said, "We're Swedish." I said, "Where were you born?" "In New York City." "Well, where were your parents born?" "In Minnesota." "Where were their parents born?" "Minnesota." "Where were their parents born?" "Sweden." "So I'm Swedish." Okay. So They went to the point where they wanted to display this for the person asking the question. And I say, well, why stop there? Why not just keep going back?
Yeah.
And by the way, if you did that, you know where you land? Africa. So on that level, we're all African. And who you're declaring is your family is an arbitrary cutoff point in your ancestral tree to the point where you have a sense of comfort and pride in where you have planted your flag. You should be self-aware that it's arbitrary.
Well, speaking of planting flags, Tolliver, every president since John F. Kennedy has talked about space exploration, but I'd venture to say that no one did it as inspiringly as Kennedy himself.
Well, yeah, back in 1962, JFK proudly declared that the U.S. would put a man on the moon, and he was right. Here he is.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
That man can speak. The first crewed landing of the moon happened just 7 years later in 1969, and the last time a human set foot on the moon was 1972. More with Neil deGrasse Tyson coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. This hour, we're talking with astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson about all things related to the cosmos, space, stars, everything in between. And while this conversation happened about a year ago and the things in space we talked about didn't change, one thing did here on Earth. You're going to hear a reference to Elon Musk. Remember him? We referred to him as a private citizen in the original broadcast. And now, as you know, he's not that. He is maybe the most powerful man in Washington and also a special government employee. Our conversation with Neil deGrasse Tyson continued with a caller named Tim from Bradenton, Florida, with a question about what our universe actually looks like.
Hi there. I'm so excited to speak to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Huge fan. I consider it an honor and a privilege, so thank you. My question is, what would the observable universe look like from the perspective of a galaxy formed on the outer edge, very early on in the universe?
Yeah, sure. So we formed early on in the universe, and we're here today. So any galaxy that formed back then is alive today, but we don't see it other than nearby galaxies that sort of aged with us together. But as you go farther and farther away, we are looking farther back in time. So if we go to a galaxy born shortly after the beginning of the universe and we see it, that light has been traveling for 14 billion years. Over that time, it's become a full red-blooded galaxy, and it's somewhere beyond our horizon. We can't see it, what it looks like today. We can only see what it looked like back then. If we go to that, if we could somehow magically go to that galaxy, the universe from that perspective would see us being born, because our light from being born would only just now be reaching them. And that's the weird, wacky, cool fact about a universe that has this sort of expansion. So, yeah, the universe won't look different to them. It will look just the way ours looks, except we'll be the baby galaxy and not them.
Does it bother you, by the way, that NASA now has to rely on private space companies to get astronauts out into outer space? Or is that a good thing? What do you think?
That it should have been happening decades ago, first of all. And by the way, the Apollo program, it was all tax-based money that paid for it, but NASA was already in deep relationships with the space industry. Then it was sort of the aerospace industry at the time. I live in New York City on Long Island, and in Bethpage, Long Island, was Grumman Aerospace. They built the Lunar Excursion Module, the LEM. People today still walk proudly down the street because they had an aunt or an uncle or someone who worked as part of that project. So the private enterprise has always been with us. It's a matter of whether private enterprise took an initiative. And then the rocket has their name on it instead of NASA. So, and I think that should have been happening decades ago, to have turned space from a space program into a space industry. Then it becomes an everyday part of life. And why not? It's the universe.
Right. Let me ask you one more thing about that, though, because there's private industry assisting NASA or doing it on its own with, in conjunction with NASA. But there's also things like Elon Musk's Starlink, where he now, as a private citizen, has a lot of power over the communications in places like Ukraine that rely on his satellites. And he could sort of just by himself change the course of a war. What do you think about that? A private citizen having satellites and that kind of power?
Yeah, so historically, I don't think it's ever boded well when a private citizen meddled in geopolitics outside of the boundaries of what would normally happen either at the United Nations or in peace talks or any kind of other diplomatic encounters. So it seems to me those kinds of things should be vetted by the State Department. That's why we have a State Department. So you can't have individuals running around. They might not be fully informed about the consequences of their actions, whereas the State Department would be. Some information is secret, some is sensitive, some is protecting troops. So I don't mind people having power. I mind if that power is not checked by people who have access to the bigger story that needs to be known and interpreted and understood.
Let's go to Emily, who's in Compton, Illinois. Emily, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Emily, and my son Brad is going to ask a question. What would it look like on the inside of a black hole?
Cool. Do you want to find out? I don't want to find out. So as you fall into a black hole, if you look behind you, you will see the entire future history of the universe unfold, because your time clock will slow down. And you won't know this. You'll just be living your life, but everything outside behind you will look like it's speeding up, and trillions of years will go by. as the whole future history of the universe unfolds. And as you go forward, there's a description that I'm only retelling it to you because I didn't fully follow the argument, but it's based on Einstein's general theory of relativity, that it's as you go through the black hole, an entire other space-time, and you're not crushed and dead. If you survive this, there's an entire other space-time that opens up in front of you. So you leave your previous universe behind and enter another one. This is why, not only in science, but in science fiction, black holes are commonly thought of as portals to other places. So yeah, but you can test all this by traveling into one yourself. Now, I have, it's not quite in my will, but I've expressed this to people. If I'm dying from something, send me into a black hole. Let me die there. Right?
Wow.
I'd rather do that than get hit by a bus or die in a hospital bed. And then I'll give all the reporting that I can, and I'll get to experience nature at its most extreme. And I think that would be a cool way to die.
Brad, does it make you want to travel into a black hole now hearing that?
Oh.
No.
No. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for calling very much. And let's go to Sammy, who's in Park City, Utah. Sammy, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering, I had heard something on Science Friday from a physicist last week, and she was talking about all the possible ways that the universe will and could die eventually. And I was just wondering what Neil's thoughts on were what comes after that, or if there's a multiverse, or there's just nothing.
Yeah.
Good
okay.
question.
So there are multiple ways the universe could end based on the physics that we now understand. For me, the most terrifying is if the dark energy continues unabated. This is that mysterious pressure in the universe that's forcing us to expand and accelerate in that expansion against the wishes of gravity. That if that goes unchecked, the universe will expand so severely that in 22 billion years, it will expand faster, we think, than the fabric of the universe can stretch. And we'd end up ripping the fabric of the universe. And it's called the Big Rip. I lay awake at night wondering about that. If that does not happen, we will nonetheless expand forever as the temperature of the universe descends to absolute zero. So the universe will not end in fire, but in ice, and not with a bang, but with a whimper. Now, we may be part of a multiverse, but that doesn't concern you because you're in this universe.
Yeah.
So could be plenty of other universes doing just fine, but our universe, all of our data point that it's on a one-way trip to oblivion.
Let's go to Douglas, who's in New Orleans, Louisiana. Douglas, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just had a question on your thoughts on light pollution and its impact on humans' connection with the night sky. We get to see the eclipse during the day, but there's so much lost at night now, and I want to see what your thoughts are with that.
Yeah, it's tragic. Thanks for that question. It's tragic. I don't want to cheapen the word tragic by saying, "Oh, there's light in the night sky," so that's the world has tragedies. Let's save the word tragedy for that. Right. In this case, it was unfortunate that there's entire generations of people who will grow up having never experienced the majesty of a perfectly dark night sky. And I don't know that it's getting worse, but it's just simple that most people live near cities. And if you live near a city, it's bad. But if you live out in a farm, you can see the Milky Way and other subtle elements of the night sky. So you just have to make sure you take a trip away from a city sometime and to appreciate what our ancestors saw every single night of their lives, that every night that wasn't cloudy. So the reason why I don't think the light pollution is getting worse is we've gotten a little more clever about the orientation of lamps in the streets. In the old days, the light would just illuminate everything. If you flew over a town in an airplane and saw a street light, that meant someone was paying for electricity to generate light that went up into the atmosphere and through the window of your airplane to your retina.
Right. What a waste.
That's a complete waste of money.
Yeah.
So we got clever about this. And so lamps now have shades on top. When you do that, you don't need as much voltage, much wattage. So there are ways we get around this. So it's too bad. And we know what's worse than the light pollution is satellite pollution. You talk about Elon's Link satellites. You're looking at, oh, that's a beautiful star. Oh, no, that's a satellite moving through. Initially, it's kind of fun. Oh, you can see a satellite. And then you realize, no, I want to see the pristine night sky without our technology to contaminate it.
Yeah, I have to say, the best night sky I've ever seen in my life was on an island called Vinyl Haven off the coast of Maine, which was so dark that you could see so much. And I don't want to overuse the word magical, but it was magical. And I wish I could see that more often. Where's the best night sky you've ever seen, Neil deGrasse Tyson?
On mountaintops, where we put observatories. Oh, by the way, did you know Maine, if you look on a map, Maine is just out there. I mean, because the east coast of the United States curves, and so Maine is like sticking out there. It's halfway to London, England or Greenland, right, and Iceland. So yes, you get a night sky there, and there are people duped into, if I may use that word, duped into thinking that the southern skies are uniquely beautiful. So have you ever been to Australia and say, oh, the sky, you could just touch it? And I'm saying, do you realize how many people don't live in Australia? So it's not that the sky is inherently better. It's that there's no light pollution. And if the North had as low light pollution as the South, you wouldn't be uniquely complementing the Southern Hemisphere. As the way, and I'm delighted to learn that your best night sky was off the coast of Maine.
I mean, it was a long time ago. Maybe the lights of Boston weren't as bright back then. Let me go to Nancy, who's in St. Paul, Minnesota. Nancy, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hi, lovely talking to Neil deGrasse. This is exciting. But sir, I recently read about an FBR fast radio burst, FRB, and I have too many people in my area that are like, oh, those are aliens, and I'm like, well, it's just so far a radio wave. But where are they coming from, and what could you tell me, educate me about what they really are, these bursts?
Yeah, so anytime we find something mysterious in the universe, or that is something that didn't previously exist in our catalogs, if your first explanation is it's aliens, then you're not really doing science, all right? You have to say, well, can I measure it a little better, a little differently? What does it resemble that I know, and what is different? Can I isolate this? Can I bring a different telescope to bear on this? So the very first radio pulses, which became the prototype for what we call pulsars, people thought they were aliens, all right? In fact, there was tongue-in-cheek in the first chart reading of the pulsar. It said LGM, someone, or little green man, because who could possibly be sending signals with such regularity in a chaotic universe? And then we learned that they're rapidly rotating objects very predictably, and circumstances in their environment can promote the release of radio waves instead of visible light. And we have radio telescopes, and you see these pulses, okay? And some are really fast, like 1,000 times per second. And you say, well, only aliens could produce that. Okay, maybe, but that's not my first thought. Maybe there's some physical phenomenon I have yet to learn about that's causing this. And even after I've run out of all such explanations, I'm still not jumping on the alien. But because look at all the things we didn't previously understand that we could have just explained away with aliens and walked onto and went on to other projects, but we didn't. We kept probing it. So as tempting as it is to say aliens did it, it's not my first thought.
So that brings me back to something we were talking about a bit earlier, and you've used evidence as you've talked through a lot of these questions that people have had for you. You call in your book Starry Messenger for us to focus more on evidence as we resolve political disputes and do all kinds of things. Do you think that will happen? Do you think that we'll get more evidence-based, fact-based in terms of how we communicate with each other, especially in this country?
If arguments were evidence-based, there wouldn't be so many arguments. So when two scientists have an argument, which we have arguments, there's an implicit contract that we have signed. It's implicit. It's either I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong, or we're both wrong. And if at any point we still can't agree, the solution is always we need more data, or better data, or a different kind of data to resolve this. Then we go out for a beer. That kind of doesn't happen. And so talk about the middle of one of the examples in the book, in the chapter on conflict and resolution, there's a liberal community that's like heaping upon the conservatives, accusing them of being anti-science. And so then they'll cite the climate change denial and this sort of thing. But it's as though the liberals want to take the science high road. But then you look at, well, who is into feather energy and crystal healing and astrology and homeopathic medicine? Those are deeply embedded in the liberal community as voters, right? And to embrace these ideas requires that you are in denial of some or all the mainstream science associated with it. So one side can lob complaints to the other, claiming they're a high road, but if you look at what's actually happening, they don't have the high road. They just don't. And so it's this kind of self-reflection that doesn't happen often enough because everybody thinks they're in the right.
Our guest, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's director of the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History. His book is called Starry Messenger. He's got a podcast and a TV show called Star Talk. Neil deGrasse Tyson, it has been so wonderful having you on The Middle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was fun. And next week, we're going to be taking your calls live on the topic of trans rights and the entire conversation surrounding trans identity following President Trump's order that there are only two genders in this country. As always, you can call in at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com, where you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter, and you can sign up for our video podcast on YouTube so you can watch us as well as hear us. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Bermestaz, John Barth, Annika Deschler, and Brandon Condrins. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the more than 420 public radio stations making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I'll talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping in another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.